John Pollock here with you, along with John Ramdian and Cody Saftik, and we have another championship fight to discuss. It's going to be two title fights headlining the UFC's return to Dallas coming up on May the 13th. It's going to be UFC 211. We know Stipe Miocic is defending his title against Junior Dos Santos, and then we have Joanna Jedrzejczyk defending the Strawweight title against Jessica Andrade. And Andrade seemed to make the most sense, especially when Rose Namajunas got paired with Michelle Waterson, eliminating those two as options. Jessica Andrade has won her last three fights, has looked very impressive since cutting down to 115. Did this make the sense to you, John, to make this title fight?
It does make sense, but however, I just watched the Kovalkiewicz-Jedrzejczyk fight. That was super fun. Maybe they're saving that for a trip to Poland, but I definitely want to see the rematch. And I think that Jedrzejczyk, she's going to be such a better fighter after that Kovalkiewicz fight, after dealing with something that she hadn't dealt with before in her UFC career, and the damage and the toughness of Kovalkiewicz. And I think that will serve her very well in this fight with Andrade, who's definitely going to be aggressive.
Yeah, I like it. I think you got to have fresh challengers, fresh storylines, and I think that's exactly what Andrade poses. Not only is she a threat at 115, but she was a perennial contender at 135.
Wonder how that is.
Extremely strong. So when you look at the low points that Joanna Jedrzejczyk has had in her career, and not a whole lot of them, but maybe it's that strength and that tenacity in those takedowns. The biggest question now for Andrade was, well, how is she going to be able to? Is she going to be able to go 5? She looked great against Angela Hill. She showed that she can pace herself. She can fight a smart fight and go at least the 3 rounds. So now you have those good little question marks, those good little questions at play. When you look at Claudia Gadelha and what she was able to do in those first 2 rounds of use the takedowns, control her, Andrade has all the same tools. But similar to that Claudia fight, you know you're going to have to go a hard 5 with Joanna. You know she's always going to be around. And as John said with the Carolina fight, she's learned so much from that outing and other 5-round performances that just being able to draw on that veteranship should play big for her.
In addition to that, you know, the Kovalkiewicz fight, she was new to American Top Team. She's been there quite some time. She's working with wrestlers. She's probably working with, maybe she's not, the bantamweight champion of the world in Amanda Nunes. I know Amanda Nunes' partner, hoping to make a run for the championship as well. So you imagine that Joanna Jedrzejczyk is going to be the best version. We're going to see better takedown defense. We're going to see a whole lot of everything from Joanna Jedrzejczyk in this fight. And, you know, I was a doubter. I wasn't sure. But the more and more I watch her, the more entertaining, the more complete of a mixed martial artist she is. She's always looking to kill her opponent, and that's why I love watching this gal fight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as well for this fight. I think it's a big challenge for Joanna, but she's also been very outspoken about the fact that, you know, her amount of fights at strawweight, it's a limited amount she wants to be cutting to this weight. And you would figure that Joanna is someone that may be able to have that influence to really spearhead that 125-pound women's division. I mean, she is someone that, if she says, listen, this is where I want to fight, I think if she were to defend her title in this fight and really push for that, that could kind of open the floodgates and create a new division for the women, because that's where she wants to be.
That's where she wants to be, and 125 does make some sense. Yeah. Invicta has a lot of talented flyweights as well, but when you look at the fact that they just opened up the women's featherweight division, and largely it's just the women bantamweights going up to featherweight. If you open up this women flyweight division, it's largely going to be the strawweights going up. So it's essentially the same weight class that you're watching. It's like when we watch Calderwood-Letourneau. They're both strawweights, but we're just watching them fight at 125. Does that make more sense? Absolutely. But is introducing more weight classes now create a disinterest for fans that there's so many weight classes, so I don't know who's fighting where, I don't know who's the champ. If Joanna wins, if she's a 115 champ, she goes up to 125, she wins 125, and Nunes is the 135 champ, she goes up to 145, wins 145. You have 2 women controlling the 4 belts?
That to me is a different issue. To me it would be, I think they need to be much more hard and fast with exclusive weight classes. And I know you always like the idea of guys floating, and I'm fine with that, but not when it's champions. Because as much as we look at this idea of George St. Pierre coming back and fighting Michael Bisping, to me it's just, it's a one-night big event, but then you could leave the middleweight division in chaos with this guy winning the championship. And George may never fight at middleweight again. And then what have you done to that championship? The same can be said here. To me, we can open up this division, but Joanna, that means you're no longer strawweight champion. And I think that they have to be kind of hard and fast with these weight classes. And to Cody's point, I look at 125, and to me, just off the top of my head, I see a lot more options of women, not only coming up from 115, but your Leslie Smiths, who are somewhat undersized at 135, much less 140, fighting at that weight. So to me, it's that division you could fill up a lot easier than the problems they're having at 145, where it's a division of 3 at the moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned Val Letourneau and Calderwood being 115. if you ask them, they're like, we're not 115. We kill ourselves
Rollins,
to
yeah.
get to 115 pounds. Please create 125 pounds. And when it comes to champions and the weight classes, you're trying to create interest. You're trying to create, if you're the UFC, if you're the new owners, I don't care if I have a champion that's 115 pounds who's constantly winning fights, but nobody's watching. The venues are empty. If you get your champion to move up to 125 pounds, you create new interest. Right now, we're talking about 145 pounds, where right now it's the new champion, Jermaine Durandamy, you have Holly Holm, and you have Cyborg. Outside of that, what interesting fights are there? However, if you have a fighter moving, especially the champion of 135 pounds, Amanda Nunes, willing to move up, you've just created a new storyline and you've created interest, because what interest is there right now for Amanda Nunes at 135 pounds? Who are the stories for Amanda Nunes that's going to create interest with the casual fans?
One thing I'm looking at too is that when you look at the men's flyweight division, we've noticeably they've dropped Kyoji Horiguchi, who's a contender, Ali Bagatinov, who's a contender, Zach McCoskey, who's a contender. They have less flyweights on the roster than any of their other weight classes, their popular weight classes. And now you're talking about introducing the women's flyweight division. You're not even taking care of your men's flyweight division, and not saying,
well, they've tried. They've tried. They have one guy,
but it hasn't worked. So now you're gonna drop one and start another one as if that's gonna have some great success. I think that introducing all of these weight classes is hurting them to a certain extent, and then maybe that's something they have to review.
Well, there's definitely an argument against more weight classes because of that reason, from a business reason. But you look at it from fighter health and safety.
Yes, 100%.
That to me should take precedence in this, because
You're right.
when you see a Val Letourneau cutting weight and many others, it's like, this is brutal for these women who it's like you have 20 pounds of difference, and it's not viable for a lot of these women. Final thing on this card in Dallas, you've got Stipe Miocic and Joanna Jedrzejczyk defending their titles. This is a really big venue, American Airlines Center in Dallas. That's like 18,000 seat arena. Do you see these two who are on their own? I mean, that's outside of Cleveland, I don't know what kind of building Stipe Miocic is filling. Do you see this being successful with the two of them being paired together?
Well, I do, but I don't think you're going to fill a venue just with these two. You need other big names, and that's what it comes down to. You have the heavyweight championship of the world. So if you're a casual fan, it's like, wow, this is cool. Junior Dos Santos, the former champion, the guy that knocked out Alistair Overeem, we can get behind Stipe Miocic. We all understand how good he is. Joanna Jedrzejczyk, super exciting. Again, comes to demolish your opponents. But again, you need other fighters on the card that are going to, create that interest for the casual fans to fill a venue that big. So we know the UFC's not done.
Well, we will see what happens with the UFC 211 card. That's all the way in May. That's years away in terms of MMA years. For Cody Saftik, John Ramdine, I'm John Pollock, and enjoy your weekend.